Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Arski. I'm one of the consultants with the Cohort Consortia, and it's my pleasure today to welcome some of you back. We probably met just about a week ago, or maybe even at the beginning of August, when we looked at just the three key documents that we had available to you for kindergarten. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. That was kind of one of the prerequisites for coming into session one, but if not, welcome anyway, and we are going to just touch on those a little bit today, but I will try and get everybody caught up and so that you know where to find everything if you have missed some of those sessions already. So welcome. We're going to start our adventure with the new math curriculum in kindergarten. And it's my hope that what we can share that we've been doing in Zone 4 will be helpful to you to get started, as well as to maybe just add a little bit to your toolbox that you already have if you've been teaching kindergarten for a long time, or if you're just brand new to it and are looking for some ideas. So let's get started. I'd like to begin with our acknowledgement. I'm coming to you from Treaty 6. In the spirit of reconciliation, we want to acknowledge that this gathering is taking place on traditional lands across the province of Alberta, home to many diverse Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We acknowledge that this is a land of traditional meeting ground, giving voice to the original peoples and the story of creation of this country in a way that history may have forgotten. And we recognize all of our Indigenous partners from across the province, as you are all coming from different locations within the province today. So welcome. It's nice to have a provincial cohort where we can certainly get together and have some opportunities to have conversations and share some information. And remember that this is also not just a sort of delivery type of session. I'm hoping that you'll unmute yourself at any point in time or connect if you have any questions or you want to share things. We can certainly do that through here as well. Okay, so what I'd like to cover today is I'm just going to do a very quick overview of those key documents that we need for this session, which will just make it everyone on the same ground and on the same playing field. And if you were in those sessions before, please bear with us just for those few minutes that we do that. I'd like to look a little bit at some of those key concepts and verbs. I would like to maybe talk a little bit about how we identify some of the big rocks, because that's been a question that's been asked a lot about, you know, where will I find the essential learning outcomes, and is there going to be a document on that? So again, we'll just touch on that a bit as well. I want to provide you with a sort of what we're calling taking inventory now that we're moving into a new curriculum. And I recognize that for kindergarten, maybe not so new. There's going to be lots of carryover. Foundational knowledge is foundational knowledge, and we recognize that. But we also want to make sure that that we are meeting all of the new outcomes and just touching on some of the new focuses that might be in there as well. And then possibly some planning resources or ideas that you might want to use as you're starting to structure your first couple of months of school. So let's begin first of all with just a quick recap of the changes in our curriculum. We are in math. We no longer have strands. We now have organizing ideas. And I find that AKA strand that we were talking about previously, I will find that right behind the word organizing idea. And we will have a look at one of those just shortly. But that organizing idea is a really important sentence, because when we talk about the big rocks, that's where I want to start. I want to make sure that I can really find those and be comfortable in finding them. The second one is the guiding question, which is really actually designed more for the teacher than anyone. The guiding question, if I'm thinking and reading that question, I'm thinking about how will I unpack the answer to that question in light of the learner outcome that I'm about to teach. So what are the tools I'm going to need? What are the big rocks in that? What are the ways I'm going to unpack that? And then how am I going to test for beyond just straight content? How am I going to test for understanding? How do I know that they're able to take that information and transfer it down in the long haul? Learner outcome is always as it has been. It tells us what we are supposed to be teaching with our students and what are our goals? Like, where do we want to make sure the benchmarks are, and what are they have to be able to master to say that yes, they've achieved what they should in their grades. So those learner outcomes still remain to be those important pieces that we look at. The knowledge, understanding, skills, and processes, also called CUSPs by the first letter on each of those words, unpacks that learner outcome for us for the knowledge, the skills and procedures that bind together to an overarching statement of an understanding, and being able to really unpack that knowledge, skills, and procedures, not individually, but as a married group, helps me to really unpack and meet the intent of the understanding. And again, we'll look at those. Literacy, numeracy, and competencies, remember, are continued from the 2013 ministerial order. They were not changed in this one. So we still have the 8 competencies. We still have numeracy and literacy progressions. And those remain on New Learn Alberta, that you can find them there. So we should be quite diligent in always making sure that as we are planning our unit, we are also incorporating those into our plans and into the activities that students are going to see. And it's really important, I think, that we make sure that we name them so that students are familiar with them and are able to understand what they're all about. So let's start with the very first key, so what we're calling kind of a key document. And it would be in this order. If you haven't gone through the process already of watching or doing a video through one of us that's doing the numbered outcomes and curriculum comparison documents, there is a website. I will give that link to you at the end of the session that you can go to. There are videos that explain the numbered outcome documents to you. There will be videos that explain each of the 3 key documents that we are using in Zone 4. So as sort of a background, we got together in Zone 4 in the school divisions, and we looked at how might we unpack the new curriculum. And it was done well before the final version came out, so we were still working on the draft. But we got a lot done in that time frame, and enough to certainly unpack where we wanted to go and how we might handle the final draft when it came out. So this document looks very familiar to you, I'm sure. It is the color of our math document as it appears in the printable curriculum side of the New Learn Alberta. And this is our color for math. And you'll notice that we have the 3 different distinct colors in it. And so here is our organizing idea that you see that we were talking about, one of the more important lines for sure that we want to rest our heads on. And the word behind it is where I find the idea that I'm about to unpack, aka strand in the past. So if you're not sure where to find it, that's where it's going to be located. And so when it changes from one idea to the next, then we will change the wording that's in there. So that's how I can tell where I'm at in the curriculum. So the statement that comes behind here generally spans a number of different grades. And in this case, it spans all 7 grades. This one goes K to 6 all the way across. And within this statement is where I'm going to find the big rock. What is the big concept that's sitting in there and running through all of those grades? The other ones are the guiding questions, and they are specific by grade, and they would continue on as we looked at the other grades. And then we get even more specific as we unpack the learner outcome for our grade, in this case, kindergarten children investigate quantities to 10. So this document should not look completely new to you, but there are a few things that we added into it. And that was only because in PLC conversations, as we were trying to reference things and compare and talk, we found it a little bit confusing sometimes to figure out which row of understandings we were on. A little bit different than what we've seen in the past, we have that learner outcome, and then we might have several rows of understandings or cusps that go along with that. So having said that, sometimes we had to count pages down and then count rows down to figure out which one we were actually wanting to talk about. So to make it easy and to make it also easy to reference, even as we move through the year, we went through and we numbered them. And the numbering convention reads as follows. The very first item that appears would be a grade. In this case, it's not a number, it's a letter because we're in kindergarten. The next one represents the organizing idea. So since we're working in number right now, N stands for number, and I will show you in the next document how I know what letter is for what word. The next one is a number, and it tells us which learner outcome I'm dealing with. Now, this document isn't going to change its orders. We as teachers can change the order because we can teach all of our outcomes in whatever order we feel is best suited for our students. But this document isn't going to change its order from day to day, week to week, month to month. It's a fixed document. So numbering this was a safe place to go because we knew that it would stay in this order. So what you're looking at when we say 1.1, the 1 refers to this is the very first learner outcome that has been mentioned in kindergarten in this document. The fact that it has a decimal behind it, a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, whatever, simply means that there's more than one row of knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures. In other words, more than one row of cusps attached to that outcome. And that doesn't always happen, but it does a lot in primary and in other subjects as well. But we just want to make sure that we're clear on how to find these. So the learner outcome never changes in its wording. It's just what's below it will change. The understanding will have a new focus with knowledge, skills, and procedures, and that will change from row to row. So we use the same standard numbering convention for every grade. It just changes with the number in front. So this is grade 1, this is grade 2, still numbers, still first outcome. 0.1 indicates that this is the first row and that there's probably another row. So let's look at the next row. So here you see kindergarten, KN 1.2. So it's still children investigate quantities to 10 because that's not going to change. Here is my next row of understanding, skills, and procedures. Same thing for grade 1, same thing for grade 2, and so on. And these have been numbered like this all the way to grade 6. And we use that numbering system as we move through other documents as well. So just want you to be aware that we've done this in zone 4 and lots of people have adopted it, and that's fine. It's not a must do. It's just so that you understand the documents that follow this and how we proceeded with them. So this is what we refer to as our numbered outcomes document, same document that is found on Learn Alberta, just it has been numbered for easy reference. So if you're sitting in a PLC, it's very easy for you to say, hey, I'm working on KN 1.1. Can you find that one? And we go from there. So everybody knows it's numbered. So you should download that document if you plan to use it. It's not absolutely necessary that this one be in color, but I would suggest downloading it on 11 by 17. And if you're going to go back to back, I would do it so that it flips up and that you can just read them continuously going through. You don't need to print the entire document if you're working just in kindergarten, just printing off the first, whatever it is, 12 pages that you need to go through before you hit the grade 3-4 group. Some other things in this document that are important. Over the time now, we've been able to get clarifications, and Alberta Education has provided us with a quick sort of summary and clarification of some of the wording that is in there, and I think it's really helpful for us to remember that. There are some places where we have a little bit more discretion about what we're going to put in, and then there are other places where this is a must-do, and we need to make sure for consistency that everybody is doing that particular word or that particular strategy or whatever it was that is being mentioned. So how do I know which is which? So when you are reading through that long document that we just looked at, this one right here, as you read through, you may come across the word includes or including. And whenever you see that word includes or including, it means that whatever is behind that is required knowledge. So if it's a bulleted, it states something like, or we have some examples comparing two quantities, taking away one quantity from another, finding a part of a whole, could be using objects, could be using naming attributes, whatever it states, we have to make sure that those are included in the teaching and that the students learn that. That doesn't mean you can't do more than that. That's not to say that's the only thing you have to teach, but those must be there, right? Those are not negotiable. The such as means that you may get an example that's given in the document itself, in the government document, our outcomes document, or you might have some suggested words that might be used when you are teaching that particular outcome or that topic. And having said that, usually what we're finding right now is most teachers are saying when they have words listed, oh, I teach those words anyway, like I do that. And that's very common, and we're actually seeing that. But you also might have other words that you've had great success with. You might have other strategies that you might have great success with. You might look at the example and say, oh, you know, that's a little bit out of the realm of the culture of my kids. I might be needing something that's closer to home. You have the flexibility when it says such as to use different things in there, as long as the intent of the outcome is still being met. And then we have sometimes, not often, but it does happen where we see that there are some words in brackets. And in this case, these are mathematical terms that we want the students to learn. But that doesn't mean that I would use that word necessarily, depending on the grade, in every sentence that I do with the child, or if I'm doing an activity with them. I might actually use more lay appropriate, age appropriate language. So in this case, this one has to do with translations. And it looks, or transformations, and it talks about translations, rotations, and reflections, which are mathematical terms that we want the students to know. But we also know them as flips, slides, and turns. And so with kindergarten, I might definitely link that I'm sliding something which is more formally called a translation, but I might, because of age appropriateness, start using slide a little bit more than I would the other wording. So again, you have some flexibility there. The other thing I want you to be just cognizant of is that you have verbs, and I almost want to call them skill concepts, because that's really what they are. Those verbs actually are not sort of set aside. It's not that we do content and then verbs. We actually want to make sure that those are being done at the same time. So when I'm assessing a student, I'm also assessing their ability to meet those verbs, or those, in this case, skill concepts. So for example, and they can mean something different depending on the context that's given. So children interpret composition of quantities to 10. So these are the verbs that are associated with skills and procedures. In this case, if I'm going to interpret compositions of quantities, I might identify them, compose them, decompose them. I might recognize them. I might even represent them, depending on what it is I'm asking them to do. So that would be one way to have interpret as one of my skill concepts. However, over here in grade 1, moving into geometry, students interpret shape in 2 and 3 dimensions. So now I'm really looking at how they sort these different shapes. How do they model what's a 2D and a 3D? Like, how do they create them? So again, interpret is being used in the same word being used, but maybe it is actually being approached a little bit differently because of the context. And so we always have to be very careful of what that context statement is and what is it that we need to do with those. I'm going to actually revisit those a little more intently when we get into session 2. The other piece is that organizing idea. Remember I said that's where the big rocks are. I need to be able to know what is the key concept that's sitting up there in that statement. Like, what am I looking for? And what is it that sort of is the big rock that goes all the way across from kindergarten to grade 6? If you look at your very first organizing idea, you'll see the word quantity in there. It's not the only one, but that is the one that stands out. That whole organizing idea that covers K to 7 is really focused on quantity. And quantity is a pretty big word. I mean, it's timeless in the sense that we had quantity 100 years ago. We'll have quantity 100 years from now. Because I haven't really narrowed it down, it is pretty open. It's very timeless. It also has meaning any place that we go in the world. And until I start to narrow it down, in other words, move more towards my learner outcome, I have a pretty open possibility here of what I could talk about for quantity. It could be the quantity of people. It could be quantity based on numbers. It could be quantity of objects that I'm looking at. It has a lot of different areas that I can focus on. But right now, it is a concept, and it fits kind of the bullets of what a concept or a big idea would be. It's timeless. You can go anywhere in the world, and you may not speak their language, but if you can figure out the word quantity is their language, there is a word for it. They would understand it in the same way that they would in English. It's abstract, right? It's broad. Until I really know what you want me to do with quantity, not really sure how much you want me to nail that down for kindergarten. That's where it starts to become specific and a little bit less out of the abstractness. And it's transferable, right? I can move it to several different focuses, several different opportunities, several different applications. It doesn't just not fixed in one location. It's not fixed in time. It's not fixed in North America. It's not specific to Alberta, etc. So remember to find those in the organizing idea. That's where you're going to find those big ideas. The second sort of key document is the curriculum comparison document. And that was just an opportunity for teachers now, for those of you who just did this with me about a week ago, for us to go through and have a look at what did we teach before? What was the 2007 curriculum that we were looking at? And what is a new one looking like? And where do I see the same things just really being carried over? And where do I see something that's new? Where do I see something that's changed? Whatever. So how this document was put together is that down the left-hand side, you will find the key outcomes that we used in our old curriculum in the 2007. The next 3 columns refer to the new curriculum. And what we did is we asked teams of teachers to sit down and look at where is the old outcome that you've been teaching and are familiar with found in the new curriculum. And in actual fact, when we first started, we found that it was easier for us to do the understandings. We read the understandings and compared those to the old outcomes because in a lot of cases, they were really, really close and they were very similar in the way they were worded. When you look down the middle column, you'll find that you have the learner outcome and it's numbered, so you'll know which one it is. Now, these are not in order, because now we're simply looking at that numbered outcome and we're saying from there, which one of those rows fit to this outcome over here, or more than one, maybe there's more than one. So you'll see that the numbering is showing up here, again, not necessarily in order, but the color is also being highlighted over top of the learner outcome. In this case, this is all related to number. I know that because there's an N in it and it's kind of a pinkish red. And that's going to be significant because that's going to be the color that we use to identify number all the way through all of our grades. Anything that's related to number will have this kind of a colored highlight to it. And that will become even more significant in our third document. So as you go through, you see the places that they're matched. You might even see a place where it's highlighted in yellow. So if the wording over here, so here's specific learner outcome number 1, it came from Shape and Space called measurement, now simply called measurement, M. This is the color for M. It had numerous understandings that fit to that outcome. Now, because of that, we did not look for word, like this does not have to be identically worded over here for us to say it's the same. If the intent over here is really the same as the intent of what the new outcome was saying, we didn't identify that the wording had changed. We simply realized that really we're trying to achieve the same thing. The yellow shows you what has been changed or added or is completely new. So although the intent of the understanding and the outcome seems very similar, because I don't see a ton of highlighting in here, there is a couple of things that have been highlighted, and that's what's saying, this is what we used to do, this is what we're going to do, and this is new. You did not do this before in your grade, so we highlighted that in yellow. So anything that's highlighted in yellow is new to your grade. Now, it doesn't mean that it was new to all grades. It may just have come from another grade, or it is specifically new to kindergarten. So you see that the color changes as we move forward. Geometry is G and it has a purple color, P for patterns, T for time. And you'll notice that there's nothing over here because we did not have outcomes specific to time. We didn't have a strand of time. So this is new, and so there would be no partners. So that's why you're seeing all the yellow highlights. So that's the comparison document. Now, if you have not yet looked at those and you have not actually done a comparison between the two, you might want to pause the video and actually do that first before you go on and watch any of the other pieces to this. I would have the numbered outcomes document sitting beside you. If you're going to print this document out, and again, I'll show you where it is, I would print it out in color. I would also print it out on 11 by 17. It's much easier to see and read and jot notes down as you go along. The third document is a sample year plan. And again, it's just that, it's a sample. It's not to say this is written in stone. It is really a reflection of several groups of teachers working together. In Zone 4, we work with several of the school boards, and we work with all of the kindergarten teachers, all of the grade 1s, all the grade 2s. So we had lots of feedback and lots of input as to what we kind of thought should be happening in September, October, November. Again, even within those boards, this is not written in stone. This is not a must do. If you've chosen to do things by themes and you want to continue to do things by themes, absolutely. If you wanted to start at the opposite end of this document and work your way to the front, that's fine too. We simply use this because the majority of the people are actually using this, and this is how we're unpacking our PDs to match the rollout. And in this document, we also took into account that we needed to do bridging, maybe not so much in kindergarten, but we did in the other grades. And so what does bridging look like? So here you'll see this is where the color became significant. Everything that's this color is a number outcome. So we actually borrowed the template from Edmonton Public when we were out on homeschooling through virtual. Edmonton Public was so great to share all of their documents, the modules, the scope and sequence that they had. And this was one of those documents that everyone seemed to be able to readily pick up, and it made sense to them. And so we simply used the same format, the framework of it, and then infused it with the same sort of continuity of the documents that I've just showed you. So here is what we are seeing in pink and red. That means these are all number. And again, in primary, we always go back, revisit, we teach, we revisit. We're always working for mastery because we know that these are the outcomes that we have to assess, but we're not assessing those until June. We don't report on those until June. We're not doing those right in September. So as we decided what needed to be put into each of the months, it was typically what would you start with? Where would you go if you were teaching kindergarten? What has always been your kind of your starting point traditionally? Let's see how that fits with the new curriculum. And then my question to them was, so your outcome says quantities to 10, but is that really what you're going to do? And they said, no, it would be much smaller. So the yellow that you're seeing is what they suggested they would be starting with for mastery. And you'll see how this has been bridged over. There is no rush to do this by September 30th, for sure not. So we're only working on these small chunks for mastery. So you're continuously revisiting all of these different statements that are in here and assessing and assessing and assessing and assessing to see how they're progressing through. What you're seeing here, these bullets, those are the understandings. So this is, remember the learner outcome wording never changes, it's the understanding. So these are the 3 understandings that they felt they would be doing in September, October. And in this process, we're trying to sort of focus on 2 months at a time. So we'll meet again later on, and then we'll be looking at November, December, and so on. So anything that's in yellow is sort of a movable target, but it's a target that we're using to try and get to mastery by generally January is what we're looking for grade 5. You'll find in December it even goes up to grade 6 a little bit. We also said that subitizing should begin as early as possible, but if not in September for sure, in October, and it would remain ongoing for the whole year. And so we have subitizing cards that we provided and those types of things. A big debate over whether patterns should start right in September or right in October, November. Half the group said, you know, I do it right away. The majority of them said for kindergarten, probably not until November. Again, this is just a suggestion. So we do have teachers that have started an intro to patterns right off the bat, and that's fine. You're more than free. Nothing's written in stone here. And again, if these yellows are, if I've got 100% of my students meeting those and successfully, consistently meeting those in all of the outcomes that we have stated, then we're not going to wait until the end of November. If they're already achieving that in October, then move forward. So you've got lots of flexibility here. So that's how you read it. You'll see that in September, they also said time. We do calendars, we do carpet time, we do counting, we do reading. So they said that would be something that would happen every day and it would go out throughout the year. So that's why you're going to see the green under each month as an ongoing, and you just keep revisiting that as you do it. They also said we would probably start with some introductory shape and identification. Again, they're focusing on 2D. That one should be highlighted. They're focusing on 2D. to start with. Just even because you can go outside right now and see lots of 2D things, you might see some 3Ds, and that's fine to talk about. But that the focus is really just let's just get them going on 2Ds. We can use money to leverage some of those as well, and we're going to talk about money a little bit because we're using that in Zone 4 quite a bit. So that would be another way. So this is another document that you should download. Those are the 3 key documents. And again, I would print those in color, but those can just be on normal 8.5 by 11. That's how they were designed to be done. And the whole year is there. And remember, this is a guide. It's not a must do. There's no absolutes in there for sure. So you see that in December, we have the same quantities to 10. We have a few more outcomes being added by the time we get to January and so on. So it's always you're revisiting for mastery in June. Okay, so I hope that helps with those 3 documents. At the end, I'll give you the link as to where to go with those. But you definitely want to make sure you have those in hand if you're planning to use them. If not, then it's just for information's sake, and that's fine. So as we said, with the groups that we work with, we try to kind of work 2 months at a time. So wherever possible, we've kind of looked at this already in June with the groups, and so that we could get ready for September, October. And now we're looking at the same thing here. We're saying, it's August, let's have a look at what does September have to offer. And we know that September is lots of routine building and lots of little bits that need to happen as far as, just getting the lay of the land, especially in kindergarten, and just getting settled into that kind of an environment. But we still want them to be working on things, and we want them to be mastering some of those outcomes. They're going to be working through them and revisiting them. So we're looking for continuity and consistency. So this section here now, this taking inventory, is going to ask you to have a look at specifically those ones we talked about for September and October. So here we see them. We see that the specific outcome, we see that quantity is measured with numbers enabling counting, labeling, comparing, and operating. This is my organizing idea that's sitting up there. It's specific for number. And now I see that I'm going to be working on these. And again, if you see other ones that you normally work on, feel free to do that. But on this page, and again, you might want to stop the video. What we would normally be doing is actually sitting down with you, and part of the work that we would do is, let's take a little bit of inventory time here. Where are we at with these outcomes? What tools do I have already that are going to help me meet those? What do you need more of? So if you're working with a grade partner, it's a great time for you to have a conversation about, when we're looking at this, how does that unpack for us? And again, for most of you who've been teaching kindergarten, it'll be very similar, but we're looking at 5. So now's a good time just to do a quick inventory check and see, what do you have that you might want to share with somebody else? And as we hit some outcomes, you might even want to think about, this came from another grade. What do I need to go visit and talk to another teacher about? So in each one of these, remember, you were just looking at the understanding, and that's why I'm unpacking these pieces for you right now, so that you can actually see what the knowledge and the skills and procedures are that go along with that understanding. And again, do I master every one of these in September? Absolutely not, because you keep revisiting. Maybe I only get to 2, maybe I only get to 3, maybe I do get to 4, right? It'll depend on your kids, and they all come at different places. So again, when you look at these specifically, what do you need? What do you have? What do we need more of? So for each one of these pages, you may want to just stop, take a quick inventory to see where you're at, knowing that you're going to be working on this for quite a while, right? This is not a 1 month, 2 month thing and we're done. It's not a one and done. It's a continuously ongoing, and you're bringing in patterning into it as well. And I just keep reassessing. So I might be describing quantities relative to each other using comparative language. So maybe I can only go to 3, and my comparative language only goes to 3, whereas John is able to go to 5. And I've got Jenny over here who can go to 8, right? So I can differentiate based on wherever this child is at. The outcome hasn't changed. The procedure I want them to look at and what I'm going to use for descriptors hasn't changed. It's just the number that I'm working on with each of those children. So this is how each one of these pages, I won't read them through, but just so that you can see how those would fit. Same thing with shapes. right? There's simple shapes. Fall is a great time to get outside, and we've been so lucky to have a warm fall. So we could go outside, we could have a look, and we could use common things that they see outside to find 2D shapes. Can we find some 3Ds? Great, that would be wonderful. But what do we see in the environment that we could use and leverage right now? Now, let's talk a little bit about, I had mentioned money earlier. So we have financial literacy that has been introduced, and that's a great thing. Glad that it's back. We're glad that it's down here, because I do think we have so many students right now that don't really understand money. We have a generation that are struggling with place value. I think for a lot of you, if I say the word place value, the first thing that comes to mind are columns that say ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. But that's the process that we use to teach different places of numbers in a number. That's not place value per se. So money was something that we used to leverage for that. It used to be a prime manipulative. And so with the resurgence of financial literacy, children need to know about money. And that's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing. But the other piece to this is that money offers us such an incredible tool to unpack math and to unpack so many of the different outcomes that we have to teach, that we had long conversations about, let's take money and let's use that as a prime manipulative and a concept that we need to teach right from kindergarten up, and use that to meet as many outcomes as we can. Not saying that's the only thing they'll ever see for the whole year, but since I need to learn it, I can't really have good discussions about my piggy bank and savings and doing mock budgets and things like, I can't do those unless I understand something about money first. So what you will also see in the numbered outcomes document is we have pulled in the financial literacy right at the bottom, or at an appropriate place where there was space in the particular grade. We've included these right in the math document because we're actually treating them as, like I said, a manipulative, a concept, it's a tool, and we're really going to hammer that through as a tool that we can use for all kinds of outcomes that I'm going to see. And then I'm going to use other things as I move along. So in kindergarten, I need to know the names of the coins, the bills. I need to be able to identify their attributes, such as their color, their number. What are the images that are on there? What's the value of it? What's the size? Which one is the largest? And knowing those kinds of things, large or smaller, is already that comparative language that we were talking about. If I can see colors, I know an attribute already. If I can identify some of the animals that are based on a coin, again, those are some of the attributes of the coin. And that's really what they need to be able to do. Just initially up front, this is all we're putting in here. There's a little bit more to it, but we'll come to that as the year goes on. And the question up here really is, how will you use that as a concept to teach? I need to learn about money, but how could I use it as a manipulative at the same time? And I have some ideas for you. So let's look a little bit at the money. What could I do with it? So one of the things I did is I went into the curriculum document and I just pulled out parts of statements. Could be knowledge, could be the outcome, could be understanding, could be from skills and procedures. I pulled out statements that come in there, and in some cases I shrunk it down a bit so it wasn't quite so long. But anything that you see highlighted in yellow actually could be achieved using money. Now let's remember what I said. We're not just going to use money, but right now we're kind of leveraging money till maybe Christmas where we can. It's not going to always work, but where we can, we're going to try and use it as the tool, but also the identifying concept that I need to teach them so that they become so familiar with money and they know what the value is, but I can use it as a counter. I could use it to share. I could use it to group. I can use it to find attributes. I can use it to find length and measurement, etc. Right? So money could be very versatile for us right now. One of the activities that we've been doing quite a bit of, it's sort of just to introduce, and if you're looking for how do I even bring this into the classroom, buying some money, having some money in your classroom would be great, where you can just simply put it on the ground. And this is what we've done with students. We give them a bag of assorted money, or just a bowl like this. We've taken groups of students too, where we just give them sort of a third or a quarter of an ice cream pail full of coins and bills. And sometimes I even throw in some geometric shapes into it. And then we just dump it. We just say, can you just dump it out on the floor? And can you clean it up so it's easier to see? So remember what I just said, clean it up so it's easier to see. That's all we gave them for instructions. And I'll be honest with you, that's the same whether I'm in kindergarten or in grade 6, because all the way up to grade 6, they need to learn money. It's hard to do financial literacy if I don't know what money is. So they might dump it out and they're going to see lots of these kinds of things. And you might be saying, I'm pretty sure I see pennies on there. And the answer is you do. And so we did order pennies, and we're actually suggesting that we should include pennies. Might say, but we don't have pennies in our pocket, and we don't. And we tell the children that we don't have it in our pockets. We don't walk around with it in our pockets. But you cannot go out right now and buy a coffee in the morning and go to work. You cannot go out and get a bill at a restaurant. You cannot go out and buy a pair of shoes. Everything that we calculate is still to the cent. You go buy gas, it's to the nearest tenth of a cent, right? We still calculate with pennies. We just pay to the nearest 0 or 5. So we've learned the rule to pay, but the calculation in the world still includes pennies. And to us as teachers, that's incredibly important, because those pennies, those 100 pennies to build a loonie, is absolutely foundational for place value when I want to talk about tenths and hundreds. And I think that's something that we've lost along the way. So if we could get that back again, and the students are really actually quite comfortable in just accepting the explanation that they're not in the stores, they're not in your pocket, but we can show them signs. They can show us signs. We ask them to write things down and bring it to school. Write us the things that you've seen down that show clearly that we still use to the nearest penny, not necessarily that was rounded to a 5 or 0. So case in point, 20% sale, regular price, $21.98, right? That's common. That's what we have. Budgets don't round to the nearest 5 or 0. Now, typically when you do budget, you usually do it to the nearest dollar, but that's not necessarily the case either. So it's important for students to know that. So when we dump this, it might look like this. When you just say clean it up, most of them will do something like this. Most, not all, I can tell you that, but most will. They'll go by color, or they'll go like this, or they'll put things that look the same together. And so if you remember what I said, clean it up so it's easier to see. I did not use the word sort. I did not use the word identify all the loonies and put them together. I didn't name anything, because I want to know as a teacher who in kindergarten even knows the names of the coins already. Because if I have a whole core group of students who already know the names of the coins, and then I have a whole group that have never ever seen them at all, well, that's complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So I don't want the ones who know the names of the coins sitting around waiting. I want their activities that I give them to be quite targeted, because they already know that piece. Maybe they need to find the attributes. What are some of the designs on them? What makes them unique? Do they even know the value of them, right? But in dumping like that, we just walked around the room and we would just ask students, why are these together? And some students will say to you, because they're all loonies. And again, instead of saying to them, oh, you know that that's $1, you could say, how do you know it's a loonie? Well, it's got a duck on it. And you'll hear that a lot. It's got a duck on it. And then there's a big debate. No, it's a pelican. No, it's a swan, right? So that's a conversation. That's an attribute that's on the coin. They have to figure it out. It's a loonie. So maybe we have to work on that a bit, right? Do we know what it is? Do we know what this coin is? It's gold. Yeah, it's all looks, they all have a duck or whatever they want to say on it, but do they know what it is? Some will say it's $1. And you say, what does $1 mean? Just keep asking those questions and writing down the names of the kids who are responding. That you want to get a sense of who knows what. What do they know? What do they know when they get the bills? Like we put bills in there too. Like, do they know that that's a bill? Do they know it's a coin? Find out what they know without telling them, and then slowly work it out. If I'm a student who knows nothing about this, that's okay. You're going to have grade 6 students who don't either. But I can use these as a counter. If I don't know the names of them, I can say, can you find me 3 of any one of these that look the same? You choose. Now it's just a counter. Until I learn the name of it, until I know this is a loonie and you say find 3 loonies, now I can test that they count to 3. And I'm also looking to see that they actually know which coin is the loonie. So instead of telling me the names of them and telling me what they're worth, work it through and see where they're at with it. Children don't necessarily know the word coin either. That might be something we need to help help them with. I held up a $20 bill in a class, and I held up a toonie in a class. And I asked them, I said, and I did say, this is a $20 bill, because we had been working with money for a couple of days. I said, this is what? And they said, a toonie. And I said, what is it called? $2. I said, correct. But what else is it called? If this is a bill, does anybody know what I might call this? And some of the students said it's a coin, but that was very few. It's a word that's foreign to them. So there's a word that we might need to work on. All right, how do I do this? I didn't order any money. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this. Well, I can still get going. And remember that Canadian money has color. We are not a black and white rectangle with a 10 in it, photocopied on the photocopier. That is not teaching students Canadian money. They need to see it, because if I ask most of you to reach in your pocket and get a 20 out, most of you will look for green. So when you want to work through with the children, and this one you can just upload onto your smartboard if you wish. This one gives you very realistic looking money. I will throw it in the chat box so that you can grab it when you watch this video. So if you download that app, you have that opportunity, then you just simply drag out, right? And I have the potential now of being able to say, who can go and find me a nickel? If they've learned that the beaver's on the nickel, then they'll go grab it. Who can grab 4 dimes, right? It's when they know them. If they don't know the names of them, then I have to model it differently and say, who could find 4 of the same thing, etc. This is a great little app because you can change it, the background to white if you so choose, and I just use it to create my slide decks as well. You can increment what you want them to pull out. They can come out 2 at a time, 5 at a time, 10 at a time, which for kindergarten, that's not so significant, but it is in grade 1. So there's lots of possibilities to use this. If you don't have any money, you can definitely use some of these pieces as well. You can also enable the 50-cent piece, still made, but not often seen. But why do I care about that? Well, because when I want to share something, when I want to share a loonie equally, I could share it with 4 quarters, but I could also share it with 2 50-cent pieces, right? So there's other things that I can do, but that's not going to happen in September, October. So we're not going to worry about that right now. So there's one tool that maybe will be helpful to you. You might want to even take something like this on the smart board and just put a 5-frame on there. You could take any subitizing picture you want. And I wouldn't just all use fingers. I would use all different kinds, and then just put them randomly underneath, and they can put that many coins in. And if they don't know the name of the coin, then they just count this as a counter. If they know the name of the coin, you could even put the finger, let's say 2 fingers here, and put nickel underneath. Have they associated the word nickel with the picture of a nickel? And then you can have the coin sitting out here. So again, lots of different ways that I can do this. But instead of starting with the traditional sort of daubers and black, counters that we use, let's put money in front of them and use it as a counter until I know the names of them. And then even when I do know the names, and you can say, how many nickels do I have? I have 5 to subitize plus 1. So there's my 6 as I work my way to 10. So use them as a counter, use them for money, use them to learn. I could do the same thing here. Can you put the right number of coins? I won't say it's a penny. They should know that underneath or by each number. And you could change the coin again if you want. Here would be one where I just ask them to drag out. Can you show me 5 nickels? Can you show me 3 pennies? And I'm not moving towards them. I'm hoping they're going to know which coin to grab. So you're really starting to meet those outcomes. Using part wholes, right? I could put 1 penny here, 1 penny here. What would the total penny be? What's the whole going to be? So again, this is not happening in September, but just so you get to start to think about how these might be used as a tool, but also as the money. So I could have 2, but then I could talk about it being 2 cents. So there are templates on your folder that you'll be able to access. It's called part whole. If you don't have one, easy to design. There are subitizing cards in there, and that's why I say I wouldn't always use finger ones. I'd have hashtags on there. There's dot patterns. There's rec and recs on there. So there's a variety, and that's good for the kids to really start practicing those. If every child can have their own set of cards, that would be great. They could play war. You could call them and just go to 5 first. or not, because there's nothing wrong with them going to 10 and just counting. But this is what they need. They need a story of the coins. They need to learn about coins. They need to learn about the fact that they don't make me anymore. That's important. There is an app. It is a teacher paid teacher resource. I'm very careful when I choose those, but it's been so well done about the attributes of the coins that I would really say that if you want to save yourself some time, I made this slide, but if you wanted to save yourself some time, just download that one. It's $3.50. I would even take off all the money that's on the bottom because they don't need to know that right off the bat. They just need to know that this is a maple leaf. They might not have seen that before, that it's 1 cent. We'll have to talk about what cents are later, etc. I've also included, just to learn them, there's bingo games in your file folder as well that you'll be able to access. So if you just want to play bingo with them, that's a fun game. But again, I'm targeting specifically. If you wanted to drag some pennies in on here, you could do that. This particular one comes from Money Mentors and it did not have the penny on there. You could play Go Fish. There's a whole card set, cut them up, deal out 3 to each person. Then I get to call on somebody. Do you have a dime? If they do, they give it to me. I put that pair down. If they don't, I have to pull a card. Those are fun games, but they're so targeted for your outcomes that you want to do. I want to practice my letters of the alphabet. I want to practice the sounds of my words and my coins. So I might hide the N around the room. I might put a D around the room. There's letters for each letter or for each coin, and then give them a handful of coins and they just have to go and deposit the nickel with the N, the D with the dime, and so on. Show me the money might be one that you want to do later, more into sort of end of October, might not even be until November, where you put a number in here and they get to show you that in a variety of different ways. Now, because if they're just going to 5, this might be a tough one to do. You might even just want to say my number is 4. Money has to be one way of showing it. And if I don't know them, just 4 coins would be fine. But what else do they have in the classroom? 4 blocks. Can they draw you a picture of 4? Can they put their 4 fingers and trace them on their, like, whatever, so that they're just getting a sense of show me, and it doesn't necessarily have to be money then. But as they get a little bit older, we change that. These are templates. Again, you probably aren't going to need these right off the bat, but just to make you aware that they are there, that we could take 5 pennies and make them a nickel, so that children just get to see. This would be the absolute most that we would ever see in kindergarten. We're not going to do anything more than that. But this would be almost like the precursor to using a base 10 block, except this has meaning, right? This has tangible meaning. I can relate to it in the real world. I can relate to base 10 blocks procedures, but I don't walk around with little squares and rods and flats in my pocket, right? This is the context. And I think if we could start with this, then place value in a base 10 block has more meaning. You could use coins for patterns, you know, lay out a toonie, a dime, a nickel. I don't have to know the names of the coins. Just could they find, can you make the same pattern that I did, right? Or do they even know that it's a pattern? 2D shapes expressing time and position, the first one, the second one, the third one, before, after. We were also tasked, I was working with a grade 3 teacher last year for most of the year, and although she wasn't piloting, we did do a lot of work with the new curriculum with the students. Money in particular, because we wanted to leverage that for place value, and we really wanted to see how well the students would respond. So she was looking to build a kit, but as we built a kit for grade 3, she wanted something that fit in their desk or in their cubby holes, that they would each have their own resources and we didn't have to run around with money and everything else. Then we started to hear from other grades as well, asking for, you know, could you create one for kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2? So we did. There's no requirement for this, like this isn't a must do, but you might get some ideas too. You're more than welcome. We made them as cheap as we could. We went to Dollarama, Dollar Tree, and kind of just got the basics that we could. Money was the only one that probably went away from most. A lot of these you might even have in your class, but the full thing of what goes in the kit is on the website too. It's its own video, its own slide deck. So I'm not going to go through it in its entirety, but this gives you an idea of some of the things in the kindergarten one. Here are your supertizing cards, what they look like. So a little bag would look like this for them. We had numbers in there that they're going up to 10. There are some words that they're going to come across, those words that we talked about before when we're teaching the concept, the outcomes. So I created small cards that would reflect those, that they could use for think, pair, share, those types of things. And then number lines. You can put the coins on the number line, right? They can just count the coins down to 10. Your goal is 10. If they can get further than 5 beforehand, that's fine. But this is kind of what the kit looks like. Small plastic container, again, from Dollarama. This was the size that we used if you're wanting to build one, and it just fits in their desk. The number line is a glazed number line, so we could use a dry erase marker. We really liked them because they had 10 on one side, 20 on the other, but we've been asked a lot of times by teachers where we got them. So the link is here, and it will be on the website or on the slide deck. When you look at this, you'll be able to access it. Because you've got shapes, it's not too early to start thinking about what's around that you can leverage for shapes. It doesn't always have to be just from a picture of a triangle and a circle. So we could talk about drums. So we could draw in some of our Indigenous learnings at the same time that we're teaching different parts of or different types of shapes. I included Cree syllabics in here just so that you could see how a triangle gets used. There is no intent for children to learn the syllabics, but I wanted them to see them, but I also want to identify some of the shapes that we were talking about. Any one of these are active links that you can just get more information for yourself or for the children that you might want to bring into the classroom. So this is the site where you will find both the key documents. So when you look for the numbered outcomes, curriculum comparison, year at a glance, you will find each of those documents beside a short recording, generally about 7 minutes long. It will unpack the whole thing by grade with you. So I encourage you to watch them, but in that order of numbered outcomes, curriculum comparison, and then the year at a glance. And remember, nothing there is written in stone. It was just done so that it would make it a little bit easier for us to manage and to have conversations. There is also a math drop-down tab across the top. You'll see a math one, and that's where you'll find these videos and any resources that go with each session. So as session 1 is finished, you get a recording, and then if there's any resources that I think might help to get started, or that I showed you some of them in the slides, they'll be there. And you don't have to download them right away. They're not going to go away. They're there in perpetuity. So just use them whenever you need them or not. I mean, they're just there if you need them. The kits are found in the additional resources, and you go into the drop-down menu, and there's quite a bit in additional resources, so just feel free. And French immersion teachers, you have your own tab as well across the top there, as is science. So hopefully that gives you a good start for September. October gives you a sense of why we were even talking about money as well, and how maybe we might leverage money to be, a tool that would be helpful to us down the road. And not only that, would allow us to maybe enhance some of our place value conversations that are going to happen in subsequent grades very quickly.